Hey, what's going on, guys? So, just wanted to give a quick update about where this channel is going, what I plan on doing with it. Um, and it might be a little bit random. I might go a little bit all over the place, but basically, what I have planned is I'm gonna kind of film just like random stuff, but not just random. I'm gonna be talking about kind of my experience here in France. I'm an American who moved to France about in 2012. So it's been about 13 years since I've been here. And I would probably say it was the worst decision of my life, technically. I couldn't really recommend a way to do things the I don't want to say the worst way possible, but I would have totally not gone this way if I knew how the future was going to be and how my options would be severely limited coming to this country. But I'm not just going to talk about France. In fact, that's going to be kind of like a side subject. I'm sure it'll come up. It'll come up in some of my videos, but it's not really going to be the focal point. The focal point is more about how to live a life where you know you've made some choices that have put you in a certain situation in your life where you're in a less than optimal position, and you're still trying to live a life worth living, and you're still trying to make progress, and you're still trying to fight the good fight. And that is basically what my life is about. I'm 42 years old, soon 43 years old, so just put that out there. Not ashamed of it, and you know, my life is nowhere near where I thought I would be. In fact, I mean, most young kids and whatnot, especially those in maybe in a better situation, in their 20s or whatever, they're probably doing better situationally than I am, So um, it is what it is. I'm in a country where, to not to get too down on it, but French people, they don't really look at you the same if you don't speak French like they do. Now, I speak fluent French. I can communicate and say everything I need to say, but um, I have a heavy accent, and that's just never going to go away. And there's just this stigma that comes with it. Maybe not in Paris. In Paris, people are more open minded, but in my experience here, I'm in a mid-sized town here in France, in central France, and um, my experience in all the different towns that I've been in is, you know, that there's a big prejudice against people who have a heavy accents and who don't speak, French. So, um, the result is that's heavily influenced my career opportunities. That's heavily influenced my social standing, my ability to make friends, everything, right? I'm not the most outgoing guy in the world. I wouldn't necessarily classify myself as an introvert. You just have to put me in the right group. Um, but it is what it is. I'm here, and I have learned a lot more introvert tendencies. Just because anytime I open my mouth, I just get this strange look and judgment. At least perceived judgment on my side from the reaction that I get from people. So, um, but I'm staying here for my kids, and I've chosen to make that sacrifice to stay here, because if I left my kids, I just wouldn't have my kids around me, and just not being back in the US would be a dream come true, but logistically and with my life situation as it's been the last 13 years, moving back to the US is not an option. I don't have main custody of my kids, just because generally that's how things are done here. The women usually typically get main custody of the kids for relationships, where the mom and dad are living in different places or they're divorced. Or whatever. So that's that. So I kind of have to stick around for them. So my life, I've learned to adapt. I've learned, different adapting how to survive in this type of environment where I just kind of feel like an outsider. I feel like I'm living in a fishbowl by myself. I feel like I'm the only fish. I feel like maybe I'm a fish, and all around me, there are, snails in my fish tank, or, to give it an analogy, or, there are plants, and like I'm the only fish. I'm the only, like, English speaking guy who comes from a completely different culture than, country France. Like I'm kind of like in the middle. I'm not in Paris, so it's kind of like the countryside French culture, and just not fitting into that just feels very strange. And I've lived with that for 13 years, and to be honest with you, it has completely changed who I am. It's completely changed my view of the world that I live in, and what's possible for me in my life, and maybe when I'm older, I'm already 42, but maybe when I'm older, things will change. But that would really seriously take some miraculous turn on in reality, because I'm still far from anything like that happening, despite over 10 years of fighting trying to improve the situation. So it is what it is, and I'm just going to go ahead and share that with you. I'm going to be open for a lot of stuff, and share basically what I feel, has enabled me to survive, and hopefully thrive one day. I'm not there yet. I'm not thriving. Life always has its problems, but I do feel like we all want like a base level of um existence, and I do feel like I'm far from that, but I also try to enjoy a good cup of coffee, the occasional beer here and there, a good movie, the sun shining on my face, and any good experience whenever it might come, Um, so what I've learned is, life basically for me, especially being, in this country, is like there's just a lot of fake people, and I'm sure a lot of people can identify with this. It's not just France, but there's just a lot of fake people and no real interaction. It's very rare. I think I've had just a handful of real conversations with people the last 13 years that I've been here, other than, how's the weather? How are you? Whatever. Other than that, things just never really seem to progress further than that. And it's all very surface level, or it's just, people partying and not really, there's not, people at parties, drinking or whatever, hey, and just stupid conversations, Um, and I pretty much cut my drinking down to almost nothing. I drink very occasionally, so that doesn't, it's not, when you're the only sober guy in the room, um, when you're the only sober guy, it just doesn't do the same thing for you. Like you can't tolerate the same bullshit, the same fakeness, the same surface level, blah, 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 ha, ha, ha type bullshit. Like that just doesn't work anymore. And especially when you add, the whole language barrier and whatnot, it's just not a good fun experience for me. So the result is oftentimes I just end up isolating myself, to be honest with you, which is probably why, I'll need to get like an animal or something, so that I have more connection with anything really, and not just feeling like I don't matter, I don't exist or whatever. And that's just the reality of what it is. So, this channel is to share with you how do I, thrive in this anti-perfect life. It's not perfect, and it's not even halfway perfect, but how do I get through that, especially being sober and whatnot. I mean, one thing that opened my eyes is, before, like, when I wasn't sober, I mean, I wasn't never like a heavy drinker. I would say I was like moderate, but before I would like, if it was like 7 p.m., a couple beers would kind of make me forget my problems, and I would just kind of be able to kind of like zone out. My brain would pretty much click off, couple beers and then bed, and now it's more like, now that I'm not drinking, I have a lot more energy, and I have a hard time just doing nothing, to be honest. So I can't just like sit by and relax and enjoy a good movie by myself. That's very, very rare. I need to be like doing multiple things. I don't know if you would call it ADD, or if I just have a lot of mental energy or whatever. But I try to find projects or things that occupy my mind space, so that when the nights are long, those hours from 6 7 p.m. till midnight, what are you doing other than you eat your dinner, then what, and I'm finding things to do to fill that time, that make me feel like it's being useful, and I'm not being tortured for being sober, if that makes any sense. So how do I deal with it? So um one of the big things, and this is kind of more personal, but it's more about my relationship with God, and prayer, and leaving it in God's hands and whatnot. But I'm not really religious in that sense where I'm gonna go jump in and try to preach or whatever. I'm just more like keep it private, and but that helps me cope, to be honest. That's probably the biggest thing. Another thing is I watch a lot of content, people like myself who are in difficult situations where you know they deal with coping ways. How do they cope? How do they view the world in such a way that enables them to still have a decent life and feel some sense of growth or meaning, that their life is going somewhere, right? So I do listen to or watch a lot of content where people are in similar situations like me, and I get a lot of ideas, and I get a lot of help from people like that. So that's another big thing is I'm almost always listening or watching to something, and I'm constantly learning like why isolation is okay, and it's not the main goal, and it's not a goal, but it's also much better than being with toxic people or people who are going to tear you down. And oftentimes, especially sadly in this world, it's better to be in that situation than to continue accepting something that's going to tear your life into pieces, and maybe one day a brighter future will come and you'll meet new people, or the situation will change, or if you believe in that type of thing, God will put his hand on certain things and certain things will change. But that's kind of how I look at it anyways. So the other thing is I go to the gym. That helps me. Any type of public exposure where I'm among other people, even if I'm not talking to them or if I don't personally know them, like if I go to the same cafe or if I go to the same gym, I see the same faces. Maybe I say hi, whatever. Maybe I don't even say hi. Maybe I just put on my headphones. But just to kind of be around other people doing the same thing that you're doing, I mean, that is like a huge thing. Like, I mean, the way that I feel when I'm in my apartment alone again, for the 100th day or whatever, doing nothing, not doing nothing, but alone, and then when I go out and I go to a place like the gym, or even go to like a grocery store and maybe not even buy anything, maybe just look around. I know it sounds funny, but just to get out, take your mind off stuff, look at some cool products, maybe something you don't even need, maybe you'll find something, pick something up, pay a couple dollars or a couple of euros here in this case, just to get your mind off of the isolation, that you don't always have to be alone, that you can get out. You're not in prison, fortunately, and just public exposure. The other thing is my kids. When I have my kids at my place, I do feel less alone, less isolated, and it reminds me why I'm still here, why I am putting myself through this. When I see their faces, when I see their future, when I know that they're gonna have their father in the region, although I don't have main custody, I do have, visitation rights. I do see them a few times per month or more occasionally, and that is better than nothing, because if I moved back to the US, I wouldn't even be able to be in the presence, which is really sad when you think about it. So that's a really good thing. And there are fathers out there that don't see their kids like ever, and I do think that leaves a huge scar, and that's hard to live with, and that's painful, and it is what it is, and a lot of people are living with that, so I'm just glad I don't have to live that. And then um also just staying busy, having projects, learning. I have a few business projects on the side. I have things I'm learning that I feel like potentially one day could turn into something. Maybe right now it's not paying anything, but I feel like, you know and it's not always about the money, but developing skills or having a project or trying to improve your life in any way. I mean, Jordan Peterson, you probably all know who Jordan Peterson is. He says, like, clean your room, right? Make your bed, do what you can. Maybe you can do nothing. And there's a lot of truth to that. And it sounds, to be honest, it sounds a bit pathetic, right? But like, it's true. Like, go make your room in your apartment feel good, and you will feel better when living in that space. And then maybe your car, if you have a car, go clean your car, fix your car. What can be improved, and just doing stuff like that. Any type of project, anything that you can improve or make better, whether it's yourself or your skills or your environment, your situation. Sometimes I go to the public park, and it sounds ridiculous, but and I haven't done this in a long while. I did this just a few times, but I had like one of those trash picker upper clamper things. It's like a stick with a clamp on it. Just picking up trash with my kids was like a fun project. I made like a cool Facebook video out of it. They loved it. I mean, they were fighting over the stick. Like, it was just one stick. They were fighting over it. For them, it was just the most amazing thing possible. Stupid little projects like that. I'll go to like a public park or like a public forest or whatever, and I'll like trim bushes or whatever. Like, I'll trim like a tunnel into like this big, long bush so that people can walk through it or whatever. Like, anything where you feel like you're improving the situation, other people can like enjoy the experience with you. And some of the places that I've like pruned up, like, people go daily and like walk their dogs through it, and kids go in there and have fun and whatnot. Like, whatever it is, like, improve your situation. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's basically what I wanted to talk about today, is this kind of, where this channel is going. I'll be sharing other things, like some of my projects and whatnot, talking about those a little bit. There's a couple hacks that have saved me tons of time as far as like learning things, and using computers and whatnot. So I'll be sharing some of that stuff. I'll be sharing how to, deal with toxic people, and how to deal with um a lot of my content might be focused on like men and men's problems, and how to deal with being a father that has like that doesn't have main custody of his kids. I think there are millions of men out there in my type of a situation where they've been gaslighted, lied about, taken advantage of in court, and had everything taken away from them, even their own kids. And it's hard. It's hard, you know. I don't know how society got to this point where it seems to be that the default is that the mother gets the kids, at least in Western civilization or whatever. It seems to be the same way in the United States as it is here in France, that pretty much the mother is just like, unless you're a guy and you've got, heavy resources, you can hire a great lawyer and you've already got a big house and you can make a strong case why you should get 50-50. If you're not in that type of a very strong, advantageous situation, you're probably not going to get 50-50. The mom's going to get the kids, and you're going to be sidelined as like somebody who doesn't matter, like some poor guy, and just the fact that I am sidelined like that, and that women these days, they have a kid with you, and then they're like, their leverage is that they're like, hey, haha, you're not gonna have 50-50 kids, go to the side and be a loser and never see your kids, because they know that you won't. But people like me, they will take that and they'll run with it, and they'll be like, oh yeah, you think I won't do that? Watch me. I'll be a, sidelines. Like, I would rather be sidelined in reality than be with somebody who's constantly holding that over my head, that, without them, I'm going to be sidelined and I'm nothing and I'm zero and I need to put up with their constant toxicity. Otherwise, I'll be poor little me living by myself. I prefer to be poor little me living by myself, living on my terms, seeing my kids occasionally by law during my right, and having 100% control over how my kids interact with me than constantly living in toxicity. That's my choice personally. I've tried doing it the other way, but the problem is that you cannot live really a normal life with somebody who is willing to hold that over your head. That says everything you need to know about the situation, the toxicity, and the way that your kids are going to view you for the rest of their life as well. So sideline me, I'm sidelined, no problem. And I'll be talking a lot about that in the future, probably, because that just kind of seems to be the way that my content seems to go. I do have an Instagram. I'm not going to talk about it right now, but that seems to be like the majority of the content that feels important to me that I've shared lately. I do think there's an issue on that, but that's not the plan for the channel. The plan for the channel is a little bit more lighthearted. I want to be filming some general random ideas, maybe some short videos, some longer videos like this one, and just talk about how to live a decent life, although it's not perfect and it's far from. All right, so this is a new channel. Subscribe, like, comment, tell me what your situation's about. Let's all try to learn from each other and talk to you guys soon. Bye.